Hey, Lily, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me today.
You're very welcome. And we're here with Lily Tench, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but mostly we're going to talk about your book and social entrepreneurship and impact innovation and all the great things that you're doing. Where do we find you today? Are you at the University of Tennessee today?
Today I am. Yes, I
Nice.
am squatting in someone else's office after a meeting, but yes, I am at the University of Tennessee.
Do you spend a lot of time on campus at UT, or does it depend on your schedule?
I work usually at the UT Research Park,
Mm.
so it is connected to campus, but it's
Mhm.
on its own little campus over there.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that's
Mhm.
fun. Yeah.
I'm on main
I
campus
have
today.
I've actually never been to the main campus of the University of Tennessee. I'm assuming it's the sprawling sort of everything I'm picturing in my mind, right?
Yeah, it depends on what part you go to.
Yeah.
But there's a lot here, a lot to
That's,
explore. If you're ever in the area, I definitely encourage you to visit.
yeah, maybe we'll do that. That'll be fun. That'll be
Oh,
fun. I've spent actually, aside from Nashville, which I think everybody probably goes to at some point in time for like a convention of some sort.
great.
I've spent remarkably little time in Tennessee throughout the course of my life, so maybe I need to change that. Are you a transplant to Tennessee, or are you a native?
I am. I'm originally from Kentucky, so I was
Oh,
a
okay.
neighbor
Just next door.
originally. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I worked and lived in New York City for many years, and then moved to Tennessee about 5 years ago now.
Oh,
So
okay. So
the
you've been there a while. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
to Knoxville, Tennessee, which is a really cool small city, right in
Yeah.
the Smoky
I
Mountains.
have heard that.
Yeah, a lot going on in terms of innovation and entrepreneurship.
And when you were in New York City, where did you live? I only asked this because my sister lived on the Upper East Side for like 8 years, so we used to
Okay,
visit
I
her a
lived
lot there.
in different parts of Brooklyn,
Oh,
Bushwick, Clinton Hill,
oh,
and Fort
very
Greene.
cool. Oh,
Mainly.
very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. I had someone on my podcast who lived in Brooklyn, and I said something about Flatbush, and she was like, "That's not Brooklyn."
Oh, it is Brooklyn. It definitely is.
Yeah,
I
I
lived
don't
in
know. In her
Flatbush
opinion, I
for
guess
like a summer
I
as
guess in
well.
her opinion it wasn't.
I
Which was
think it's
very eye-opening. So, um, I mentioned, I think right when we were off air, so much of this show, we try to focus on sort of the integration of sustainability and social impact into entrepreneurial endeavors, which
Mhm.
I know is very near and dear to your work and your sort of passion, Lily. And as I mentioned, you did write a book, Good Business,
Mhm.
an entrepreneur's guide to creating a better world. Can we start there? Can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration behind that, and maybe in that your journey, I guess, as a sustainability and entrepreneurship sort of champion?
Sure, absolutely. So I started out working in sustainability, actually.
Hmm.
So I started working with environmental nonprofits, and during that time, I was working out of a co-working spot at one time,
Environment.
and I
Yep.
found myself working alongside a lot of entrepreneurs, people starting their own businesses, and I just fell in love with the culture of it and the
Mm,
personality type and people who see the world in that way.
right.
And coming from kind of a more activist background, I found it really interesting that in the entrepreneurial world, problems are largely seen as opportunities.
Right.
And how can we build a new solution around this problem? And I found that I wanted to help support people doing this kind of work, and that was my first kind of entrance into entrepreneurship. And I have done that in a number of capacities now. I was involved with a place called New Lab in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. There was an
Oh,
old
very cool.
shipbuilding facility that now is an innovation center for entrepreneurs, and worked at Columbia University for a bit
Hmm.
in tech transfer and focusing specifically on clean tech and turning clean tech innovations into startups. And then when I moved to Tennessee, I worked a bit with the Knoxville Entrepreneur Center here in town, and then a group called Ag Launch that was focused on agricultural innovations specifically. And now I am at the Spark Innovation Center out of the UT Research Park, which we focus on advanced tech solutions, mainly in fields like clean energy and energy storage, carbon capture, materials, things like that.
I have a personal interest in tech transfer, and I'm working with a university here in Massachusetts to help them a little bit with some of their tech transfer framework and sort of the research being spun out of the university into startups. And so maybe you and I will do a whole separate conversation on that at some point, since it's something that we're both interested in and excited about.
Yeah, it's a very interesting area. And to answer I realize I didn't get to my book.
Your book, yeah.
But I was, so through that kind of journey in my own work and my own exposure to entrepreneurs, solving, especially the ones that are working to solve some of those big problems in our world, like so that have more of a mission-oriented approach, that are working on climate change or poverty, hunger,
hard problems to solve.
Hard problems. I've been so inspired by their work and learned a lot about them, and felt like I had some things I wanted to share and pass along, and kind of a structured way to think about some of it. I also, I believe in the power of entrepreneurship to solve some of those hard problems, and want to encourage people who are inclined toward entrepreneurship to think about, tackling some of those problems. I think, rather than sometimes we're inclined to, in entrepreneurship and business, there's an inclination to want to, kind of create problems, I guess, like convince people that they have a problem,
So they'll go and then buy your solution that you're offering them to the problem, right?
Yeah, exactly. But there are a lot of really large problems that we all know exist that I would love to see that kind of innovative spirit of entrepreneurs focusing on creating solutions for those things.
One of the things I've always admired about entrepreneurs in the spaces that you're talking about, Lily, is that sort of like seeing problems as opportunities and just not being afraid of solving hard problems, right? Like, to your point, there's so many different interpretations or flavors or whatever you want to call it of entrepreneurship, and the notion of like, look, you may want to start a business to sell a product, and that's great because that's your dream, and that makes sense, and everybody deserves, I believe, their shot at their dream, and maybe they will create something that people will really resonate with folks, right? But I think of the concept of social enterprises, right, and how they differ from traditional business models. And you talked a little bit for a minute about some of the kind of key aspects surrounding, creating social impact. But again, your journey, not linear at all, right, into entrepreneurship. It sounds like it's been the right fit for you. Did you ever kind of think like, entrepreneurship is hard and maybe something that isn't the right place for me to focus?
Well, I mean, my particular journey has led me to supporting entrepreneurs, which is,
but even still, supporting them I can be just as challenging as being an entrepreneur yourself, right?
Sure. Yeah, it can be, and it can be hard to see people giving their all to really challenging life paths sometimes. But that's what kind of inspires me to try and help in whatever ways I can. But there are, there have been times of, is entrepreneurship the best means to solve some of these big problems? Are there more direct paths, like through philanthropy or government or even, large corporations? And I think that there are a lot of paths, if it were simple, obviously everything would be a lot easier. So there's, a lot of roles to play. But I think entrepreneurs are the most effective problem solvers.
I would tend to agree with you. One of the areas that I've also been interested in is, sort of the application of entrepreneurship to philanthropy, right? And sort of philanthropic entrepreneurship. Not dissimilar to kind of some of the social and environmental impact types of entrepreneurship that you're talking about. But you mentioned a second ago, Lily, about you know, there's other ways that people could solve these problems, right?
Mhm.
Governmental grants, whatever. And for social enterprises who don't go that path, who are being very entrepreneurial, they have to build this really strong community connection, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Where have you seen, Lily, some of the most effective strategies to build those strong community connections as entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Well, so in my book, so I have one section that is devoted to all the different parts of a business where you can integrate social and environmental impact.
Hmm.
And this speaks to something you mentioned earlier about, people should be able to do whatever kind of business they want, right?
Right.
They don't have to be uh, directly trying to tackle climate change through some sort of direct air capture of CO2 or something to make an
Right.
impact.
Right.
Although I do think that technology is very interesting, but they can have a coffee shop, and there can still be
Yeah, they can have a very
many,
social forward. Yeah.
yeah, many
Yeah.
different opportunities for them to be making a
Hmm.
uh, strong impact socially in their community, for the environment.
Hmm.
And so in my book, I profile a lot of different kinds of companies who are taking very different approaches to social enterprise.
Hmm.
And I go through 12 different ways or parts of a business model that you can integrate social and environmental impact. So going from material sourcing to
Right.
product design to hiring to shipping to manufacturing to voice and activism. Um, and community actually gets its own section.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but some of the ones who are doing some of those innovative approaches to making an impact on their community are not high tech at all.
Yeah.
So one of the companies that I profile in my book is called Grayston Bakery. Right? Have you ever heard of
Mm. No.
So they make brownies,
Okay.
and the innovation within their business model lies in their hiring model. So they have what's called open hiring, and they have a list of people anyone who wants a job gets put on the list. No background checks, no resumes, no interviews. They're just put on the list. Next job that opens, the first person on the list gets the job. Next
Wow.
person on the list. Yep. And so they have a bakery business, and this not only has a social mission, it gives a lot of people a first or second chance that might not otherwise have that opportunity,
Sure.
but it actually saves a lot of efficiency for them. So a lot of like the time that you spend doing all that, like interviewing and background checking and all that,
Right.
ends up
Yeah.
like actually saving them a significant amount of time and money. And then also, it has really elevated their business in a unique way. So because of their social mission, they've done partnerships with Whole Foods for co-branded
Sure.
products. They're an ingredient in Ben and Jerry's ice cream, several different flavors. So I think their social impact and their unique approach there has really contributed to their success.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking with someone here in Boston who was focused on a bakery that was very sort of um, climate conscious and, very focused on sustainability, diversity in terms of its supplier usage and those things. And I did help them to find, I wish I could remember the name of it, Lily. It was a company, I believe it was in the Midwest, maybe St. Louis,
Mhm.
pasta company that almost had the identical mission
Mm.
articulated to what this woman wanted to build with her bakery,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
and it was cool. And it reminded me of the example that you just gave as well, of how they're out there, right? These
Absolutely.
organizations do exist, and some of them
Mhm.
can be a model. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, and I'm not gonna throw any shade here, but or name names, but I was reading this morning about a fashion retailer which is notorious for its sort of let's just say non-eco-friendly approach to its manufacturing.
Mhm.
Is going to be valued at 60 billion and is probably going to IPO and made a profit of $2 billion last year, but is known for its terrible sort of environmental practices. How do
Mhm.
you encourage some of the folks you're working with to not be discouraged by something like that, right? Because you and I both know one of the biggest challenges here is as a social enterprise is you have your mission and then you
Mhm.
have your profitability, your ability
Mhm.
to actually be a business and make money.
Mhm.
How do you help them kind of not get overwhelmed by a billion-dollar corporation, right? That is, like I would think of that as being like overwhelming in the sense that like people aren't going to listen to me. They're going to go and just buy this product from this company, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that can certainly be discouraging,
Mm.
more overwhelming, and then people are going to continue to buy those products.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
say that I believe that there is a overall changing trend towards the expectation that businesses should have more of a social mission, environmental
Mm.
mission, and that is many of the large businesses now have corporate sustainability plans,
Mhm.
social responsibility plans that they put out publicly, and that there's this expectation that they
Right.
do, and that
Mhm.
is changing. That's
Right.
unique. I think that's only been in the last 10, 15 years maybe
I would say, yeah,
that
probably
that
10 years, right? Yeah. Yeah.
even started to be a thing, and it's
Mm.
increasingly becoming the norm, and people are one-upping each other constantly on,
But
you
this
know
is something you'd like to see them one up each other on, right? I mean, it's okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, you don't get
Yeah,
mad at that. Yeah.
right. Well, there's greenwashing, I guess, and that's a separate thing.
Fair.
Um,
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah.
and then customers are starting to expect it too.
Mm.
So we've got 62% now say that they expect companies they buy from to speak out about the issues that they care about.
Nice.
And then there's employee retention.
Right. Very
90
important. Yeah.
Yeah, 94% of millennials have said that they expect and want to use their skills for a cause they believe in.
Mhm.
And so to be able to retain top talent and keep employees motivated, I think that's becoming increasingly important for businesses
Yeah.
as well. So I do think there's overall changing trends, and then there's also just a lot of examples of really profitable
Mm.
companies that are not doing that.
Right.
Patagonia. I don't know if you've
Oh, sure.
followed
Yeah,
their
that brand. Yeah.
story recently, but they're like the stuff they do on the social environmental impact side is just like pretty groundbreaking,
Mm.
and they're continuing to have sales of about 1 billion a year.
Right. Right.
Really
Easily. Yeah.
loyal customer base,
Yeah.
loyal
Absolutely.
employees. Yeah, so there are other examples to look at.
It's an N of one, but I have a 22-year-old daughter who just finished her bachelor's degree 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And so she's a Gen Z, right?
Mhm.
And but as she's entering the workforce, one of her criteria, you mentioned millennials, but one of her criteria is absolutely believing in the sustainability mission of the company as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, I don't know the stats for Gen Z, but it might be
Yeah.
higher,
It maybe is higher. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Lily, you are the director of the Spark Innovation Center at the University of Tennessee, as we've talked
That's
about.
right. Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of opportunities for folks to go through accelerators, to look for different types of support programs, mentorship opportunities. I'm involved with a few here in the Boston area, but they really are nationwide, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I think this is another area for entrepreneurs where it can be a little bit overwhelming to think about
Sure.
what are the right types of programs and opportunities for me. How do I, if I've graduated from an accelerator, do I go and do another accelerator and another accelerator? Or, and I know there's no right
Yeah.
answer here. It all depends on you and what you're trying
Mhm.
to accomplish in your business. But how have you seen folks get the most out of these types of opportunities, maybe specifically at Research Park, but then other things you've done in other environments too?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And there are so many opportunities out there, which
Mm,
is an important shift towards a kind of entrepreneurial supportive culture. But I think it can also make it tempting sometimes as an entrepreneur to just do program after program after
right.
program.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it can become kind of its own safety net. And you can, some of them come with stipends or grants or investments, or it can be easy to kind of put off the actual going and building your business.
Yeah.
So I really believe in incubators and accelerators, obviously, because I work in them. But I
Because you
also,
are one.
yeah, that's right. But I believe in, maybe 1 to 2.
Sure.
I think a startup should do 1 to 2. They should choose them very carefully.
Mm,
There are a lot of different kinds of programs and a lot of specializations,
right.
and a lot of ones located in particular areas that might make more sense where a company really needs to form connections.
Depending upon what your, yeah,
Mhm.
what industry you're in, right? What
Uh-huh.
vertical, and yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I think they, obviously accelerators and incubators have an application and a due diligence process, but I think startups should do their due diligence as
Mm.
well on the programs that they like to engage in, because, a founder's time is really their most valuable resource.
There
So,
isn't anything more valuable than their time, right?
no,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so,
Yep.
so they should do their due diligence on where they're going to spend that valuable resource of their time, and they should choose the programs that most align with what they need. Um, you know, Knoxville in particular is a great place for advanced materials, for batteries, for
Mm,
energy. We have University of Tennessee, we have Oak Ridge National Lab, we have the Tennessee Valley Authority, all located right here. So
that's cool.
we're, yeah, absolutely, so we're a really great spot for that kind of thing.
Mm,
If you were planning to do something in, well, I don't, I'm not going to
yeah.
say don't come to Knoxville, um, but just as an
Okay.
example,
You can be a banner from the Knoxville area. I get it. Yeah.
right?
No, but I mean, your point is well made. It's, if you're maybe focused on, some AI or emerging tech, or,
Mhm.
you probably want to be in the Bay Area of San Francisco, right? If you're maybe focused on biotech and healthcare, maybe it's Boston or the Research Triangle. And it sounds like with you, with clean energy and a lot of what you guys are doing down in the Knoxville area, that may be the place to be,
Yeah,
right?
and there's just a lot of factors to
Yeah.
consider, and
Sure, of
what
course, many
stage
factors.
you're
Yeah.
at, what you need, what
Mhm.
kind of industry connections the program offers,
Right.
resources. So I would, usually if I see that when a company applies that they've done a whole lot of programs, usually that's a little bit of a red flag.
Red flag. Yeah,
I think,
absolutely. Yep.
yeah, I mean, you've probably learned a lot of what we could provide you already.
Right.
So it's time to build your business.
Right. Get going. One
Hmm.
of the questions we do get here is those accelerator programs that take equity stakes.
Hmm.
And entrepreneurs will say, what do you think? Should I do it? Should I do it? They're going to provide me with this and this, but they want this equity in return, and that seems like a lot of equity, and should I give up the
Mhm.
equity? And have you had specific experience with that, Lily?
Sure. And we actually don't take equity, which is
Hmm.
unique. I don't think it's a
Every
bad.
program is different, but that sounds pretty unique for you guys. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and but I don't think taking equity is a bad model. I think it makes a lot
Right,
of sense. But once again, a company just has to do their due diligence on
right.
what they're gonna get from that opportunity, and who
Hmm.
they want to have this long-term relationship with, as someone on their cap table.
Right,
The same way they should treat investors, that you don't want to take any money that's offered, even though it can be really tempting, of course,
right,
because money is very important in those early stages. But this person's going to be a part of your company.
right.
Um, there's no cutting a check and leaving. This is
Leaving, exactly.
a
Yeah,
partnership.
no, it's true.
Um,
Yeah, you have to be willing to enter into that partnership, right?
yeah,
And make sure that this is going to work for you and helps you advance your goals as well, right?
that's right. Yep. So I
Yeah,
think that they should treat accelerators or incubators that take equity stake in the same way. Someone that, because they can be a great partner and supporter if you get the right one. who are really invested in the long-term success of your company. But have to really think critically about the right match.
Right. It's hard. I don't envy a lot of entrepreneurs who are trying to make that decision around, like you said, which accelerators are right for you. The area, equity, non-equity, is this someone I can see myself in a long-term relationship with, right? It's a lot to consider. I like numbers, and I love you have the 12 opportunities that you mentioned before about opportunities for integrating social and environmental impact. But you have another number in your book, and that is 8 industries that are sort of ripe for areas where we could see a significant focus on social innovation, right? And you mentioned Patagonia, and I don't know if clothing is one of those industries, but where do you see the impact for positive change in social innovation right now, Lily?
Yeah, well, there are so many opportunities, of course.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not just 8.
And yeah, not just 8, but there were 8 that I, particularly wanted to talk about or think about, and that I think are particularly ripe for, if you're a business school student, and you're reading this book, and you're like, I would love to start a company, but I'm not sure where to start.
Area, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, these are kind of some spots where like, oh, these are some areas that could really use some innovation, and there's a lot of opportunity in. Clothing is not in there. While there is a lot of room for innovation, of course, in clothing, I would say as an industry in general, like, we could probably stop making clothing today and be fine for quite a while.
I would think so. There's a lot out there on the shelves. Yeah.
Yeah. That said, I do highlight the company ThredUp in here that has kind of innovated on the thrift store model and made it easier for people to buy secondhand clothing on a kind of a larger scale across the country. So there's room for things like that. But Patagonia is innovating, and they use recycled nylon from fishing nets in their clothing, and they're use down from old cushions and so forth in their coats. They're certainly innovating in many ways.
Yeah, a lot of great examples there. Sure.
Yeah. But the ones that I outlined in my book are circular economy. So that means, that's taking some waste. So we generally have a linear waste stream, which is very unlike nature. We extract resources from the ground, we make them into something, we use them for a while to the end of their usable life, and then they go in a hole.
Go in a landfill.
Yeah, they go in a hole. It's not our best.
It makes me crazy.
Yep. So that's a very linear process. So circular economy is anything which you're probably familiar with, but sourcing from waste, creating value, and creating more economies, more like ecosystems. So there are many different kinds of approaches to that, but it is a huge opportunity, across many industries. So that is one that I highlight here. I have agriculture.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yep.
Yeah, we've got
sustainable farming practices.
That's right. We've got a lot of challenges in our agricultural sector right now. We have a growing number of people. We have shifting weather patterns. We have a decreasing number of people going into agriculture and going into farming. And, all kind of creating this. We also saw the supply chain vulnerabilities were really highlighted during COVID-19.
Even now, I mean, I was doing business with someone recently who was blaming their delay on the container ship that hit the bridge in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And said that, the things that they needed were on that tanker ship. So you think about how fragile our logistics infrastructure is, not just COVID, but even just a situation like that where a ship runs into a bridge, horrible accident, God willing that never happens again. But just to see that was enough to completely have this downstream effect, right? This downstream ripple effect.
Yeah. So, and food is something that we have to figure out.
We kind of need.
Yeah, there's no like, okay, well,
like you said, clothing we could be good for a while. Food,
Right. Food, we got to figure that one out. So
probably not
there's a
so much.
lot of room
Yeah.
for agricultural innovation all across that
Yeah.
food chain. And the sharing economy is one I highlighted, public health, energy, finance.
Sure.
And I know they sound very broad, but I'm going to break them down into pieces in the book.
Yeah. Well, public health would be, something I certainly am personally interested in having studied public health.
Yeah,
But again, certainly highlighted by the pandemic, right?
yeah,
In
absolutely.
in how much we needed a real sustainable approach to public health in this country. Everything
Mhm.
from, testing and vaccine distribution to, wellness. How about the proper dissemination of real information versus
Mhm. Mhm.
false information? It's just so many opportunities within our public health ecosystem, which are also, yeah, we don't have, cholera outbreaks in this country like we see in other parts of the world, or Ebola, but we do have a public health problem in this country, regardless,
Absolutely.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, or many different kinds. Yep.
yeah,
So
yeah.
these are the sections in that book are, this is where I'd love to see people focusing
Really grab
innovation.
on.
Some
Yeah,
of those people who
yeah,
are, amazing, innovative problem solvers, and I think one of the things I like about entrepreneurs are that I think they're dreamers and they're doers. They
right,
think big, but they also execute. And so I think there's huge opportunities in these
mm,
areas, especially for
right.
people like that to work.
Have you seen anything? You mentioned a couple earlier on, Lily. Are there any right now? And again, if you don't want to name names, that's okay. But is there anyone doing something really particularly exciting for you right now that you're really passionate about seeing get out there in the world?
Oh gosh, so many.
Mm, so many. Yeah.
Yeah, so many. And that is one thing that in my book, not to keep bringing it up, but in each kind of strategy or section piece that I highlight, I will profile one company doing something really
Oh,
exciting
that's cool. Yeah.
in that space. Um, but to answer your question, I'll give an example that's not in the book because I didn't know them when I wrote it, but they are
Mm.
currently in our Spark Innovation Center. A company called Holocene that is doing direct air carbon capture.
Mm.
So that means that they create machines that just suck CO2 out of the air.
Wow.
And it seems like a very wild sci-fi approach to climate
Right.
change, but
How can you even do that? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but it's
Yeah.
solving a piece
I
of the
mean,
puzzle.
plants can do it.
Plants can do it,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and it can do it on a pretty large scale. It's obviously still one piece of the puzzle. We have to
Mm.
decrease the amount we're putting out in the atmosphere. We've got to do decarbonization all along the
Mm.
kind of the different elements of our economy and our supply chain, but it is one piece of the solution. So they described it as, you filled a bathtub up with water and the spout's still running, and even if you turn the spout down a lot, you're still gonna have to take some of that water out.
Right, because it's still filling. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of where they come in, and they've created this technology to do that, and there's a lot of these direct air capture companies coming up now. Not a lot. It's still a pretty emerging technology, but there are some, and one criticism is that sometimes it can take a lot of energy to run these big machines.
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah.
So you wonder what the energy trade-off is, but where they've been able to do it at this particularly low temperature and use very little energy.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
so they're a company that I think is really
Yeah,
doing
that's very
exciting
interesting.
things and going places. And they're based here in Knoxville.
That's so cool. Where
Yeah.
I was a few maybe back in like the April timeframe, so 2 months ago or so, I was talking to a company here locally in Massachusetts that is trying to reverse noise pollution
Mm.
with like almost like so how you have like noise canceling headphones, but
Mhm.
imagine that on a huge scale, right?
Interesting.
Where again it's absorbing all of that noise and pushing out the cancellation, much like
Yeah.
your noise canceling earbuds do. And one of the um sort of challenges, if you will, or sort of the complexities of that was energy consumption by the noise canceling apparatus, right? So not
Mhm.
similar to what you just said about, well, it'd be great to have this huge, like, imagine you work in a factory all day and all you're listening to are these, machines humming. And what if there was an apparatus in the factory that could just cancel out all that noise, right? So you
Mhm.
wouldn't have to wear ear protection, and it would be a much more pleasant and quiet environment to work in. But what if then, those noise canceling machines cost, crazy amounts of money to run because they're so high energy dependent, right? So they're trying to figure out that same sort of, how do we create this apparatus with a very low cost of usage,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And again, these are hard problems, right? Like,
Mhm.
and it's exciting and encouraging to see folks who want to solve a hard problem of, like, how do I build a giant noise canceling apparatus that is low energy consumption?
Yeah. Yeah,
you know like, these are
absolutely.
the kinds of things I know I don't think about, so I'm really happy that other people do.
Yeah.
I
Agreed.
don't think about removing carbon dioxide from the air, so I'm really glad someone else
Glad
is
that
thinking
people
about it.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
So speaking of these, let's call them change makers, Lily, right?
Mhm.
It's hard sometimes, right, to be a change maker and a business leader
Mhm.
simultaneously, right? And you've got to find your voice. You've got to figure out how to be effective. Um, is there ways that you've seen people overcome that challenge? Any advice that you have for them? I'm sure authenticity is a big part of it, but I don't want to speak
Mhm.
for you. Like, where do they find the balance of, they're creating their voice, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a section in my book because
Yeah.
it's a really I think often, at least traditionally, people didn't think of businesses as activists. So
Hmm.
you wouldn't expect, it was businesses' place to speak out
Right.
about social issues. And but one, they can be quite powerful in their ability to do that. And two, I think that culture is changing a bit. Now there's a little more of an expectation that
Mm,
businesses do um, speak out about issues. And uh, so I think figuring out how to do that in a authentic and effective way where not you're not isolating your customers, or you are, if you are, you're doing it very strategically.
mm,
You've really decided that this is who you are as a company, and this is what we stand for, and you can kind of lean in on the ability to reach lots of new people and gain new relationships and loyalty,
right.
who are devoted to these issues. So
Sure.
um, there's lots of ways to think about it. But one of the ones that I highlight here, and it's not my original concept, and I'd have to look at who was the one who first it's cited in
Credit
the
it.
book,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
it's I think it's victory versus values
Oh, okay.
activism.
Yep. Yep.
So, and there's two kinds there within businesses often, and the victory activism is kind of speaking up on issues that already have become pretty mainstream.
Hmm.
So, once we're uh, being in a city where it's already, an example would be where it's pretty socially acceptable to participate in the Pride Parade, for example.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you
Hmm.
see corporate floats out there, and
Right.
they're not really doing anything edgy by doing that. It's pretty like,
Right. It's kind of mainstream at this point. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
they kind of know that like this will probably help their business because
Sure. Yeah.
they are, being seen as being engaged in their community
Right.
and supportive
Right.
of causes that most people agree with.
Right.
And not to say that it's not still useful; it's still
Sure.
valuable because it
Right. There's
helps
value to
normalize.
that, but it's kind of safe, and yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and it
Yeah.
helps push issues further into mainstream,
Sure.
so it's still important, but then there's the value-based activism, which means that's when you're speaking out about things and you don't know that
Right.
it's not a battle that's won yet.
Right.
You're
Exactly.
really out there pushing the envelope on it,
You're on the
and
envelope. Yeah.
right,
Absolutely.
right, and that's riskier, but it can also have greater benefits for a business too, because they can really that's when you get stuff like that's when content goes viral if you're saying
Right.
something that is unique and um, even
and thought-provoking
controversial.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
thought
right.
provoking, and
Yeah.
you're being daring. That's when you get those, um, that natural viral content, for example, around issues, and you might have a backlash. um,
Yeah.
but often in business, as many things, it pays to be bold, and a
Yeah.
lot of businesses have taken bold stances on controversial issues and seen it paid off economically as well. But
Absolutely.
it is something that a company has to be really strategic about. And if they speak up on issues, make sure it's something that you can really, you're doing the legwork behind, right? You're like,
Right.
you're
Right.
treating your employees in the way that you're to match what you're saying publicly, or so speaking up on causes that are authentic to your business is also really important.
Yeah.
And
I
I do
think
have.
that fortune favors the bold, but I also really appreciate what you just said about, like, practice what you preach, or if you're out
Yeah,
there doing
absolutely.
certain things, like make sure you're doing that exact thing as it pertains to the treatment of your employees, your
Mhm.
clients, etc. Right?
Mhm. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
then I do go into that some more and kind of have some examples and kind of ways to think through what makes sense for your business.
Yep. Awesome. Lilly Tench, Spark Innovation Center at the University of Tennessee Research Park. The book is called Good Business: How Entrepreneurs Can Use Business for Social and Environmental Change. Thank you so much for coming
My
on
pleasure.
and talking to us about how to design and produce sustainable products, and the current industries ripe for social innovation. So, giving us so many great examples and pieces of advice, Lilly. Really thank you for it. And I will be excited to see the continued work that comes out of the Sparks Innovation Center. And thank you for being an ally to entrepreneurs and be willing to help folks, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes feel very alone. And it's great to see that folks like you want to help them become the best version of whatever it is they're trying to be. So thanks for doing that.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me. This is fun.
Awesome. And we'll see you again soon.
All right, thank you.